Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Bookseller Lightning Talk series, in which booksellers present short talks on tech tools, organizational strategies, communication methods, or innovations they've made in their stores.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia Vega, and I am from Whose Books in Dallas, Texas. Thanks, Kim, for the opportunity to just share a little bit about what we're doing over here. So we were invited to share information on our model because we run a hybrid model and have a nonprofit organization that was recently spotlighted on KAR News. So let me share my screen and tell you a little bit about what we do. All right. So Whose Books is a hybrid community-based family bookstore that really focuses on celebrating diverse voices and ideas. Our literary nonprofit that we just launched it in November of 2023 is called ARCO, and it stands for Activating Reading Communities Organization. And really our focus is to help bridge the gap in book access and literary programming for our community. Whose Books is located in a community that has been historically a marginalized community with limited resources. It's been a food desert, a book desert, a health desert, all the deserts that you can think of, unfortunately, for a very long time. We are now turning a new page, and our neighborhood is becoming a very literary hotspot. We now have 4 independent bookstores in the neighborhood, which is really great. Our mission of ARCO is to activate diverse reading communities by creating and sustaining book access, positive reading experiences, and third spaces. We are former educators, principals here in the city of Dallas, and so we really believe in the transformative power of reading. But we also know as former educators that sometimes we've done a lot of harm in our school systems about taking the fun and the passion about reading out of it because of all of the testing and, the things that happen in schools. So we're working to what can we do in the community to positively engage families with reading experiences. Our core values that we really try to focus all of our programming on is community and creating spaces for opportunities for book lovers and what we call newcomers to our place. Our neighborhood, our city of Dallas in particular, has a very high illiteracy rate. So about 33% of people in the city of Dallas report that being illiterate, and then another 33% have low literacy skills. And so they really struggle with just like basic forms. And we see that being disproportionately true in Black and Brown communities, right? So there's a lot of people in our neighborhood who have never stepped foot into a bookstore. And so when they come into a bookstore, for them, it is daunting, an intimidating experience. Sometimes they don't know, if they are here to purchase a book, or they think it might be a library, or do they rent a book? They don't know where to find the prices of books. These are all kind of little flags of that kind of show us that there has been limited access, right, in a person's life to book ownership and bookstores. It's something that maybe we take for granted because we as booksellers and longtime readers have always had access to that. Diversity, so celebrating the diverse voices and ideas and perspectives of people. Accessibility, really working to remove those barriers to book access and book ownership. Expansion and wonder, so celebrating the expansion and wonder that takes place between the pages of a book. Let's see. So in our program, we focus on those 3 things. For our book access program, we really look at removing that barrier to book ownership. And so we do that in 2 major ways. The first way that we do that is through a browsing experience program that we have. So what we do is we partner with local nonprofit organizations, schools, PTOs, and they'll let us know if they have a group that they want to bring in. Normally we keep that group size no more than about 7 to 10 people. We found that that's like the prime size for a browsing experience under this program. And when they come in, we talk to them about what reading culture is, why it's important, how we can establish a reading culture in our home, and help to promote a positive relationship with literature. And then we give them a gift card anywhere from $50 to $75 that then they can use in the store to shop, pick out books for themselves or their children, and take home and to start building their library. And so that has been a very exciting and rewarding program to get out into the community. The other way that we create book access is we pair it with our positive reading experiences. Positive reading experiences looks at creating like story times, book clubs, author events, opportunities for people to engage with literature and authors in a very positive way. And then we highlight books at those events that are then gifted out into the community. And so, for example, we'll do a story time and the first 10 families to attend get a gifted copy of the book. And then we, of course, then engage with story time with them. We'll do an activity that helps to see how they can bring that book to life in their homes. And then they get to leave with a book to add to their library. And so that has been a really fun thing to do. Under positive reading experiences, we really look at the relationship that people have with literature and reading. And so for a lot of people, it could be that maybe they were labeled a bad reader in school, or they've been a language barrier, or just a frustrating experience. So we take time to try to shift that with them, because we know that as a parent, if you had a negative relationship with reading and you struggled to do that, then you might unintentionally be passing on some of those behaviors down to our children and our families. So when we do story times and author events and book clubs, we spend time talking about, what are the positive types of things that we can do within our relationships with books to help create a very nurturing experience instead of a frustrating one. And we guide parents and families in how to do that. And so it's really, really fun to see them shift their relationship with reading while also cultivating a new one within their families. And then our Third Spaces program is an opportunity for us to partner with other like-minded organizations. And we host what we call a community and conversation once a month. I'll give an example of one of the last ones that we had. So we partnered with the Bee Project in the Family Place here in our city, and they focus on healthy relationships for teens. And so when it was Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, what we did is we hosted a book club for parents. And we did a book study on For Goodness Sex, and it talks about how to have healthy sex positive relationships and how to have those conversations with your children and young adults. And we had prevention educators come in and participate in the book club with us. And so we had several families that were then gifted that book through our nonprofit, engaged in a positive book talk, and then had resources in the community that they were then able to tap into through our Third Spaces program. And then for the kids in the family, the next week, we had an opportunity for them to come together and to talk to prevention educators and highlight some of the topics in the book. As well, so that then they had a conversation to bridge with their parents. And so all of this is made possible through a number of ways. So we receive funding through other through foundations that align with our mission. We also do receive funding through private donations through our community members. And then for our events, we either do no cost or low cost events to help recuperate some of the expenses that go into it. So our low cost events, usually what we'll do, for example, is if we're hosting a community book club, we offer that to be donation based. So pay what you can for the book club. And what we found is that while one person might only be able to pay $5 to participate in the book club and get a copy of that book, somebody else who registers for this says, you know what, I can afford to pay $50, and it helps to offset the cost. So it helps us to make sure that we're limiting or increasing book access and encouraging all types of people to participate with us in our experiences. So that's a little bit about ARCO and our model. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Can I ask how you started the non like how you divide it? What the like I get probably what goes
Hmm.
under it, but like how do
Yeah,
you do that in the store and like with lawyers? Do you
absolutely. So a couple of things that take place. So when we first started off, in November, we are a nonprofit organization and we had to seek what we call a fiscal sponsor. And so that's an established 501c3 organization that will work with us to accept donations while we apply for our own 501c3. So we have a great community partner, the Writers Garrett, it's housed here out of Dallas, that serves as our fiscal sponsor. And so they handle that part of being able to allow us to receive donations, right? Because donations can't be made to the bookstore as a for-profit organization. People can't write that off. And so when we did that, we established an MOU, a memorandum of understanding that just kind of outlines what that relationship is going to look like. We also have what we call a partnership agreement that is an internal document that helps to establish really clear guidelines for ourselves. So the bookstore, Whose Books, is the retail and the physical, the brick and mortar space for us. But then the nonprofit, ARCO, handles all of our community and literary programming. And so that's kind of our divide, right? And so in that partnership agreement, we outline what that looks like. And it's kind of, for lack of a better words, it's our guidebook, right? It's our rails, and to make sure that we're not stepping into gray area. And we had some guidance in that from some lawyers and other resources that we tapped into to make sure that, like, is this in line with, one, tax code, also two, that we're not kind of creating mucky water. And so that
are
was
you
very
allowed
helpful.
to work for both sides, or is it
Mhm.
like a certain amount of hours is one side, a certain amount of hours is another side?
The way that we've done it here, just, and we're like a mom and pop bookstore, right? Family owned and operated. So the way that we've done it is, like, my husband handles everything that is on the retail side, and I handle everything that is on the nonprofit side. And that is just like a clear division for us so that we don't go crazy. But in the actual books of things, yes, we have very, very clear guidelines with regards to how things are operated. So, like, if, for example, a story time, for example. So on story time, the nonprofit knows that every story time that we're going to put in an order for 10 books that can be gifted back into the community. And so then my husband will send an invoice to the nonprofit for those 10 books. Right. And then we have it outlined that way. Now, we also take donations and other books, like from book distributors and like Scholastic. We can apply through the nonprofit to get donations for them for some of our larger community outreach events. So it allows us to do both.
And like, let's say you needed 10 of those books for story time, but five of those
Mhm.
books for the store, two copies of the book for the store. Would you put in two separate orders
That's
for
two
the store?
separate. Yeah.
It's two
Hmm.
separate orders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's two separate orders. And so we treat it like if we were working with any other nonprofit organization, is the way that it's treated. So, like, if another nonprofit or school were to reach out to us and say, hey, we want X amount of books, what kind of rate can you give us? It's the same thing. We treat it exactly like that. And of course, for accounting and for legal purposes, they're two completely separate entities, right? So Whose Books LLC, and then ARCO is a nonprofit organization, has its own EIN number. We actually just got our 501c3 letter this week. Yeah, I know, we're really excited. But we're going to stay under fiscal sponsorship just a little bit longer because we're toddling still, right? And it's helpful to have their expertise because our fiscal sponsor has been in existence for over 20 years. And so they're helping us to kind of navigate some waters. And so it's a good relationship for us to have. But by the end of this year, we'll be out of their fiscal sponsorship and up and running as our own 501c3. So it has been really, really helpful to just lean in on the community, the literary community here that's building, and just working to like uplift each other. Yeah.
Claudia, what is the one thing you wish you'd known before launching the nonprofit?
The one thing, I used to think that I wish I known that I would have applied for the 501c3 ahead of time. But in hindsight, I'm glad that I didn't, because having the fiscal sponsor and the expertise of an organization that has been in existence for over 2 decades has really been a great way for me to have training wheels through the process, right? And for them to say, hey, this is something for you to consider. When you start a 501c3, you also have to get the board and everything, there's a lot of like legwork. And since we're under fiscal sponsorship right now, I can lean on their board. I don't have to go through all of that kind of legwork in that. And it's allowed me an opportunity to like really get to know some community members that are really interested in working. This month, we're going to have, we're starting our volunteer training this month. And so we have right now 30 people who have signed up to be trained as volunteers for us in June, which is really exciting. And what we'll do with them is we'll train them on the 3 different programs and how we'd like them to go out into the community. So it'll allow us to expand our reach. So instead of just having those positive reading experiences in third spaces here at Whose Books, then we'll have these champions that go out throughout the city. And so like one of my volunteers has already said, I have a donut shop that we're going to partner with, and we're going to do story time at the donut shop sponsored by ARCO, right? And so then we'll have that person out in the community leading a story time sponsored by ARCO, and they will also be equipped with books that they can gift out into the community. So that's really helpful for us. And now it's also giving me the opportunity to work with them still under fiscal sponsorship and see what their strengths are, because some of those people might be able to be on our board when we're ready to go out on our own for our own 501c3 to be, running on its own.
Yes.
Question.
So would ARCO then be paid like the full price? Like if a storybook was a $18.99 book, would that be paid with would the book be paid at full price? Like I always I get discounts to like schools and things like that, but would it, when you do
what we have historically done, even before we started ARCO, our nonprofit discount it's a 10% discount. That's what we offer, all of the nonprofits that we work with and campuses. We just can't afford to do deeper discounts because, y'all know. So when we do these and we do like when ARCO says, okay, this month we have 5 story times that are taking place across the city, and we want to be able to gift 10 books per story time, right? So that's 50 books. Then I will put in an order with Whose Books to say, we need these 50 books for story time. And then Whose Books will send an invoice with a 10% discount for us. And a tax exempt, because we do qualify for tax exempt status. And then so it works out really well because it allows us to, 1, generate more sales for Whose Books, right? And 2, get more books out into the community. And then when we're doing larger scale things, that's when we partner with other kind of book distributors or publishers that then have like bigger book gifting opportunities. So like I'm working with Our Kids Reads. It's a nonprofit organization based out of Maryland that's expanding their reach, and they want to bring free and diverse book fair to our community in August. And so what we're going to do is we're partnering up together with that. He already has an established relationship with Scholastic and has gotten a big donation. And then we have an established relationship with with another organization here in the area that says we can also donate some books. And so like that event is not going to generate any sales for Whose Books, but it's aligned to our community mission and allows us to have big impact. So it's a little bit of both, right? Ultimately, it's about increasing book access in the community and creating positive reading experiences. And that may or may not result in sales for Whose Books, but that is not the driving factor, right? It's nice when it can, but it doesn't always have to.
I was just trying to understand like where the money, like who is paying for the books and like what kind of a rate they're paying. Just because you have to like pay yourself also like as to.
Right. And then our budget, the ARCO budget, where we get that from is we apply for grants. We have private donors. For this year, we have an operating budget of $100,000 for our nonprofit. And so then we've taken that budget and we've divided it up about what are our payroll expenses going to be? What are our book access budgets going to be? What is our positive reading experiences budget going to be, et cetera.
Amazing.
And then for complete transparency, like I pay myself a quarter of what a full-time executive director would make. So, and that was just what we established based on our current budget. As we're building the nonprofit, yes, I need to be compensated for my time and my efforts, right? In order to do this sustainably. And I do a lot of the programming. And so, but I can't do it at 100% salary because that would eat up a lot of our budget, right? So I hired myself part-time, like a quarter of a time, a quarter of an FTE to do that. But then the rest of the money goes into programming.
That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So thank you. And the goal is that we can, increase our budget so that we can eventually have a team. Right now, it's a team of 2 part-time people, myself and a development director who is part-time, which we felt was a really important investment so that we can keep getting funds in, because I can't do programming and work on development. I can focus on programming and she can focus on development.
Amazing. What an incredible program. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a learning experience, but a lot of fun too.
Thank you for listening to Book to the Bookstore Education Podcast, brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!